Hello again. Today is a look at John Lennon's second conventional solo album, Imagine. It's maybe his most well-known, especially since its title track is so legendary, but also because the rest of it is so good too. Now let's take a look at the historical context in which Imagine was made. The earliest recordings were done over 2 days in February 1971, a couple months after John's previous album, Plastic Ono Band, had been released. Now that album was emotionally raw and even unsettling, whereas Imagine was an easier pill for fans to swallow. But these first recordings were It's So Hard and I Don't Want to Be a Soldier, which are both angry and noisy rock songs that build on the venom heard on a couple of Plastic Ono Band's songs. So the real sessions for Imagine were from May to July 1971, and by that time some months had passed and everyone, including John, Paul, George, and Ringo, were starting to accept the fact that the Beatles were done. Paul put out a single, Another Day, in February, and his own second album, Ram, in May, just as Imagine was taking shape. All of this informed the music on Imagine, as did John and Yoko's growing interest in left-wing politics. Hence the title song, John's most famous song, and one perhaps even more well-known generally than any of his Beatles songs. Everyone knows that it's a gentle plea for world peace, but a lot of people miss the anti-national and anti-religious themes, even though they're explicitly right there, front and center and easily understood. The song Imagine is sweet and orchestral, unlike anything on Plastic Ono Band, or on John's singles like Cold Turkey or Instant Karma or Power to the People. It signaled a new, more musically behaved John Lennon, and there are indeed 3 such sweeping, orchestrated songs on the album. But there's a lot more, too. John used the songs on Imagine to further explore his own psyche, so we have classics like Jealous Guy, which directly and overtly is about himself, and the aching how, evincing all the confusion and fear of Plastic Ono Band but in a gorgeous musical package. You can hear how Phil Spector, back as producer again, was putting more effort into the sound of the album this time around. No doubt he was prodded in this direction by John, who probably welcomed a more commercial feel. But Imagine is still a John Lennon album, and there's some wailing weirdness all over it. Gimme Some Truth, which John first tried with the Beatles in January 1969, and which by all rights should probably have a Paul McCartney co-credit, is fierce, one of the angriest songs he ever recorded. It's distinguished by a ringing lead guitar, pinging out single notes up and down the chords like Come Together but simpler and more in your face, and it also mentions John's nemesis, Richard Nixon. This time, by the way, the core band was John, Alan White on drums, and Klaus Voormann on bass, a reunion of the live Piece from Toronto gig from 1969 without Eric Clapton. George Harrison plays on 5 of the 10 songs, and others join in here and there, notably the great Nicky Hopkins on keyboards. The aforementioned It's So Hard is similarly clanging and noisy, but both it and Gimme Some Truth step aside for I Don't Want to Be a Soldier, which is a long, repetitive, chaotic rock and roll raga. The relentless push of this song and George's wild lead guitar runs ends side 1 of Imagine with a dizzying assault, and side 2 is every bit as good. The haunting Oh My Love has a more affecting melody and vocal performance, arguably, than anything on Plastic Ono Band, an album that, for the record, is perhaps my favorite solo Beatles album. So far, I haven't heard them all yet. But if the song Imagine is the most famous on this album, then the most infamous song has got to be, say it with me, How Do You Sleep? The song features John and George on guitar, and its lyrics are all about what a no-talent, pretty boy phony that Paul McCartney is. Fans couldn't believe their ears when they first heard it, and you still can't really. It's so vile and vicious, and it's so plainly about Paul. There's no clever vagueness to hide the identity of the subject here, like there was on a couple of Paul's songs on Ram that turned out to be about John and Yoko. Talk about airing dirty laundry. This was tawdry, dramatic stuff. A Fab Four superstar explicitly tearing down another, right out in public. Each of the hateful couplets in How Do You Sleep is memorable. There aren't really that many of them, but as an example, the sound you make is music to my ears. You must have learned something in all those years. Alright, one more. The only thing you done was yesterday, and since you've gone, you're just another day. Yesterday and another day. There. Paul's most legendary Beatles song, and his then most recent single, name-checked right in the lyrics. Yes, How Do You Sleep deserves its reputation as petty, slanderous, ridiculous, and savage, but whereas a lot of fans dislike it because of that, I love it. Musically, it's fantastic, and John and Paul quickly made up, so don't worry. One of the things that drove home the deep pain of Plastic Ono Band had been the closing track, the short AM radio sounding tune called My Mummy's Dead, on which John sounded like a hollowed-out zombie. That moribund aftertaste is turned on its head, or some such metaphor, on Imagine's final track, Oh Yoko. It's a joyous expression of his love for, guess who, and it's pretty much the opposite of My Mummy's Dead in every possible way. By far the most toe-tapping sing-along moment on the album, Oh Yoko was chosen by the record company as a single, but John disagreed. Maybe it was too happy. As a pop and rock and roll album by John Lennon, Imagine is a masterful achievement. Every single song is packed with emotion, and despite the disparate musical styles and moods, each one feels real and honest. This album is basically John having gotten a lot off his chest on Plastic Ono Band, but not all of it. He retains the confessional, nothing-to-hide approach to his subjects and his lyric writing, but with Phil Spector and Yoko, strives for a more professional musical surrounding for his erratic flights of psychological fancy. One final note about John being petty, which I always thought was funny. Some copies of the Imagine album contained a postcard of John holding a pig by the ears, clearly mocking the cover of Paul's album Ram. It's such an inane stunt that it kind of takes the edge off How Do You Sleep. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference, and John wasn't exactly ignoring Paul in 1971, the softy. So as quickly as he'd moved on from the brutality of Plastic Ono Band to the slick but earthy classic rock of Imagine, John would veer off in another direction immediately for his next album. But for now, the next Beatles solo album will be another from Paul and his brand new band, Wings, Wildlife. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more Beatles album overviews, and I'll see you next time. By far, it's the most toe-topping